The Hebrew Bible has a problem. As the source of all Abrahamic religions, it is arguably the most important source of morality around the globe, and is the single most influential text for how human beings understand themselves. Which makes it all the more puzzling why this foundational text is missing a word to describe the most important organ of the human body. I'm speaking, of course, about the brain. Throughout the 5 books of Moses, the books of the prophets, and the writings, you will not find one mention of the gray matter that acts as the seat of consciousness and the intellect. But the story gets even more strange. Whenever the Torah does describe human thought or wisdom, it ascribes it to the wrong organ. In an almost laughable distortion of human anatomy, the biblical verses bizarrely attribute mental processes to the heart. That's right, like in Genesis chapter 6, where it says, "Every formation of the thoughts of his heart were only evil all day." Or in Exodus 28, which says, "Speak to all who are wise in heart." Did God make an error so stupid that it parallels the intelligence of Homer Simpson?
There's a crayon in my brain?
Or is it we who have made a fundamental mistake? It's possible that our fractured 21st century minds have failed to understand the true relationship between the heart, the brain, and the intellect. Here's the Mensch Sense take. The apparent absence of the brain in the Bible is not a simple question, even to the greatest rabbinic scholars. The 20th century giant Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was so bothered by it that he concluded that the Hebrew word for heart, lev, actually means the brain, and we've been mistranslating it for thousands of years. But there might be a simpler way of explaining the problem. Through a Western lens, we are used to thinking about ourselves as kind of like a computer. There's the non-physical software, which is the mind, and then there's the physical hardware, which is the body. Included in the body is everything from the physical senses to the instinct to the emotion. The software makes the processor do calculations, makes the screen produce images, and makes the keyboard react to your fingers. So too, our human sensations and emotions are just a puppet for the mind that's pulling all the strings. Where did this idea of separation between the mind and the body come from? Many philosophers trace it back to Descartes in the 17th century, who said that the mind is entirely unrelated to matter. This idea has given rise to the notion that we can somehow store Einstein's brain in a vat and one day implant it in a new body. Or the more recent techno-utopian idea that we can upload our minds to the cloud. But there are several problems with this philosophy. The first is that it gives rise to the famous mind-body problem, which essentially means that we have no idea how the mind and matter actually interact with each other, since they have absolutely nothing in common. The second problem is that it appears to be biologically incorrect. We don't think only with our brains. The heart has 40,000 neurons, while the stomach and intestines have about 100 million neurons and control 90% of the body's serotonin levels. This has led scientists to confirm that we do very much have a gut instinct. How we sense and feel with our bodies has an incredibly powerful effect on how we think in our brains. This is why hunger affects our mood. It's why we are less friendly to strangers when we hold cold beverages. It's also why forcing our muscles to smile can actually make us feel happier. We've been searching the Torah to find 2 different words that describe the sensations of the body and the thoughts of the intellect. The error is that they're not really 2 separate things at all.
The division between head and heart, that division is relatively recent and artificial in the West. It comes after Descartes and with the rise of Romanticism.
So where do we find the word for brain in the Torah? Actually, it's the same word as heart. In Hebrew, lev means the embodied cognition that includes both heart and head. It's the interplay between our abstract thoughts and our sensory emotional experiences. The Torah doesn't have 2 words for them because you can't have one without the other. We find a basis for this idea in the writings of the Jewish mystics, such as Rabbeinu Bachaye, the Maharal of Prague, and Rabbi Schneur Zalman of Liadi. You think it's crazy? The Chinese also have only 1 word for the heart and mind. It's this character, which is pronounced shin. In many ways, our culture is infected with a brain-dominant perspective. Our universities focus almost exclusively on abstract information, but pay no attention to the type of knowledge that teaches us how to maintain emotional health. Our role models are the geniuses of industry and science, but many of whom lack any amount of EQ. It's about time we started redefining intelligence as an interconnected web of the heart, brain, and body. Perhaps then we will start cultivating a generation of humans who possess that rarest of qualities, wisdom. And that makes mensch sense.